This is a story that India still struggles to talk about calmly. A story filled with freedom, fanaticism, fear, nationalism, ethics, and tragedy. It is the story of Nathuram Godse, the man who assassinated Mahatma Gandhi, and the deep historical currents that shaped that moment. This is not a story of glorification. It is a story of consequences, of how ideas turn into actions, and how violence reshapes history. Today we explore who Nathuram Godse was, what shaped his ideology, what was happening in India at that time, why Gandhi became a target of hate, myths, propaganda, and distortions around the event, what history often leaves out, and how Gandhi's death changed India forever. To understand Nathuram Godse, we must first understand the India he lived in. The India of the 1930s and 1940s was not only fighting colonial rule. It was also struggling with poverty, divided by religion, torn by competing political visions, uncertain about its future. There was the Congress vision of a secular democratic India. There was also the Hindu nationalist vision, which saw India primarily as a Hindu nation. Within this turbulent space, ideas hardened, speeches radicalized, and organizations formed. It was here that Nathuram Godse grew up, not in a vacuum, but in a world charged with ideological electricity. Nathuram Godse was born in 1910 in Maharashtra. He grew up in a traditional family, surrounded by religious customs, stories of historical glory, resentment toward colonial domination. As a young man, Godse was intelligent, articulate, and drawn toward politics. He developed strong opinions early, especially regarding Hindu identity, perceived threats to Hindu society, national pride. He joined organizations such as the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, later the Hindu Mahasabha. These groups shaped his worldview, emphasizing cultural nationalism, consolidation of Hindu society, resistance to Muslim political demands. Over time, admiration turned into ideological commitment, and ideological commitment hardened into absolutism. To Godse, Mahatma Gandhi represented almost everything he opposed. Gandhi preached nonviolence, religious harmony, protection of minorities, unity between Hindus and Muslims. He insisted that India belonged to all Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Parsis, everyone. Gandhi's fasts were not just spiritual acts, they were moral pressure, especially against communal hatred. For millions, Gandhi was the conscience of the nation. For some extremists, he became the obstacle to their vision. Godse saw Gandhi's compassion toward Muslims not as moral leadership, but as betrayal. This difference of interpretation is crucial. Gandhi was trying to stop hatred. Godse believed India needed hardness instead of compassion. When dialogue disappears, misunderstanding becomes anger, and anger becomes ideology. Then came Partition 1947. The subcontinent was divided into India, Pakistan. What followed was mass migration, riots, killings, abductions, the collapse of communities. Millions suffered. Nearly every family carried trauma. In this storm, Gandhi tried to calm violence. Godse saw Gandhi as siding against Hindus. Gandhi fasted to ensure safety of Muslims in India, release of funds to Pakistan as promised in agreements. Godse interpreted this not as justice, but as weakness and surrender. He became convinced, wrongly and dangerously, that Gandhi was the root of Hindu suffering. Extremism feeds on pain, fear, and half-truths. Partition provided exactly that environment. Nathuram Godse was not simply angry. He was ideological. He believed India must be defined predominantly as a Hindu nation. Minority protections were unearned concessions. Gandhi's emphasis on nonviolence emasculated the nation. Strong retaliation was necessary for national pride. He was articulate and persuasive, able to turn emotions into speeches. But speech became something darker, justification of violence. The belief that killing one person can save a nation is the slippery slope of extremism across history, not just in India, but everywhere. On January 30th, 1948, in Delhi, Gandhi went to attend his evening prayer meeting. Nathuram Godse approached him, spoke briefly, and then shot him at close range. Gandhi died almost immediately. The act shocked the world. There was no heroism in that moment. There was only loss of a leader, of moral guidance, of a human life. It is important to say clearly, the assassination of Gandhi was a crime, not an act of patriotism. History is full of individuals who convince themselves that violence is justified. But the consequences always expose the illusion. What followed was arrest of Godse and his associates, a high-profile trial, his conviction, and eventual execution. But history did not end with his death. The assassination led to widespread grief, suspicion toward extremist organizations, bans and investigations, deep reflection within Indian society. India had to confront difficult questions about intolerance, political fanaticism, how easily hatred spreads. Gandhi's death became a warning of how even democracies are vulnerable to extremism. So what is it that is never told? Often, discussions about Godse are either simplistic demonization or dangerous glorification. Both are incomplete and misleading. Here are the deeper realities rarely discussed calmly. Godse was not insane. He was ideological and calculating, which makes his act more dangerous, not less. He did not act in isolation. He moved within networks, conversations, and echo chambers that reinforced his beliefs. Extremism grows from social conditions. Partition trauma, fear, political rivalry, and identity insecurity all fed radicalization. Propaganda simplifies history. He is sometimes portrayed as a misunderstood patriot or a lone monster. In truth, he was a product of ideas circulating in society. Violence never actually solved the problems he claimed to solve. Gandhi's assassination did not heal partition wounds, strengthen the nation, or resolve identity conflicts. It only deepened them. Martyrdom mythology is dangerous. When societies turn assassins into legends, they normalize violence as politics. Gandhi's body died. His ideas did not. After his assassination, India chose democracy over dictatorship, secularism over theocracy, elections over bullets. This did not happen automatically. It required conscious choice. Gandhi's moral pressure continued through the Constitution, civil rights movements, global nonviolence movements. Leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela drew inspiration from Gandhi's philosophy. The world remembers Gandhi not because he died, but because of how he lived. What is Nathuram Godse's legacy? It is controversial and troubling. Some fringe groups try to justify his act, portray him as a patriot, rewrite history, but mature societies must see clearly. Killing an unarmed elderly man at prayer is not heroism. Political assassination is not nationalism. Violence against civilians is not courage. Understanding Godse is important, not to admire him but to prevent more people like him from emerging. Why does this story still matter? Because the forces that shaped Godse still exist in the world. Polarization, fear-based politics, religious hatred, conspiracy thinking, echo chambers on social media. When people stop listening to each other, when compassion is mocked as weakness, when identity becomes more important than humanity, history repeats itself. The biggest lesson is not about one man. It is about how societies create extremists. Beyond politics, there is something simple. A human being was killed. Gandhi had a family, followers, dreams for the nation. He was not perfect, no leader is, but he dedicated his life to moral struggle. The assassination silenced potential dialogues, reconciliations, future contributions. Violence does not only take a life. It also takes away possibilities. Let's clear some common misconceptions. Away India. Myth Gandhi gave. Gandhi opposed partition but accepted it to avoid greater bloodshed. Myth. Godse acted only for national good. Fact. He acted from ideological hatred and misinterpretation of events. Myth. Violence strengthens nations. Fact. Violence fractures societies and deepens wounds. Critical thinking is the antidote to propaganda. History is not only about dates and names. It is about choices. Gandhi chose nonviolence, even when the world burned around him. Godse chose violence, believing it would save the nation. Their conflict was not just personal. It was philosophical, compassion versus fear, dialogue versus hatred, nonviolence versus assassinations. Which side we lean toward, even today, shapes our societies. So when we ask, Nathuram Godse, what they never told you? The answer is this. They rarely tell you how ordinary people become extremists. They rarely tell you how ideas can justify killing. They rarely tell you how violence always promises solutions and delivers only suffering. Understanding Godse is not about defending him. It is about defending ourselves from repeating his path. History does not ask us to worship or demonize blindly. It asks us to learn. Gandhi's life reminds us of the power of conscience. Godse's act reminds us of the cost of hatred. And the future of any nation depends on which lesson we choose.